Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. As you've noticed, we've had a few changes here, and I want to take just a moment to kind of address that. I did not make a big announcement that I'm changing my name. That just seemed kind of silly. But I changed my name to Eclectic Beth, and hopefully that will reach more people, be easier to pronounce, easier to spell, and definitely is who I am. I've always been an eclectic person. My interests, my passions, my resources, everything really in my life is pretty eclectic. I can't say that even my decorating style is a particular style. It's a little bit of this, it's a little bit of that. That's who I am. So it is definitely true to me. I also have this lovely backdrop here, if you haven't noticed already. This is just a fabric backdrop, and it hides a ugly bookshelf. And I use this setup that I'm filming on right here. This is my workstation. I have 3 computers that I work on daily, and I'm in Zoom meetings a lot. And so we have to have, aesthetically pleasing backgrounds. We have the background filters, of course, that we can use, and I've done that too. But I always like to have something real. And I got this on Amazon. I'll definitely post a link to it in the description box if you're interested. They have all different styles, barn doors, ocean views, and you feel like you were just really there. It's amazing. And it's just a thin fabric, like a scarf fabric that you hang. My daughter has some in her room, and the last backdrop I had was the same kind of fabric. It was the moon and the stars. Just got a little tired of seeing that, so hopefully something fresh for the new year. I felt like it was just time for a change, and I hope you enjoy it. So today's video, we're going to talk more about mental health. Yes, May is over, and when I made my last video, I said, hey, every video in May is going to be about mental health. Little did I know it was almost the end of May, because it's been a little crazy in my life. So, but mental health is something that is important every day. Every day we need to take the time to work on our mental health. And so even though it's more of a society thing to give that awareness the month of May, doesn't mean we can't address it throughout the year. We definitely should. And so what I want to do today is talk to you about the different types of providers that you may encounter if you are seeking treatment for mental illness. People often get these confused. They often don't know who to call first, where to start, what kind of person do I need to see, what kind of counselor should I see. There's so much information out there, and it really can be overwhelming. And if you're struggling with a mental health issue, the last thing you need is to have to struggle to make sure you're getting to the right place. So I definitely want to just address this today and hopefully educate you on the different types of providers and what they really do, what they can do, and what their limitations are. So with that being said, let's get into today's video. All right, so I want to start first at the top and work my way down. So I'm going to cover the physicians first and then go into therapists. So if you don't want to hear about doctors, then scroll to the end of this video and I will talk more about the different types of therapists. But we're going to start with psychiatrist. So what is a psychiatrist? Well, a psychiatrist is a medical doctor. They have gone to medical school, which is an 8-year process. And in addition to that, they have an additional 4 years to complete in a residency in mental health. Most of the time, this is in state hospitals and teaching facilities, teaching hospitals. They also have to pass a state board. So they have to pass a state board to become a medical doctor. And then they have another licensing exam to be a psychiatrist. So altogether total about 12 years of education goes into becoming a psychiatrist. Now, as a psychiatrist, they are able to definitely write prescriptions for medications, and that is primarily what people seek out psychiatrists for. You're not going to be able to go to a counselor and get a prescription for medication. You're going to need to see a medical doctor for that. And yes, it can be your medical primary care provider as well. but a psychiatrist specializes in mental health disorders only. So I always recommend to people, and if they have family members, especially geriatrics, that are struggling with mental health issues such as depression or cognitive changes, a psychiatrist can be a real asset and resource for you. There are even subspecialties of psychiatry called geropsychiatry. And of course, those are individuals that are psychiatrists, but they specifically work with seniors, the geriatric population. And those are a little bit harder to find. But my years spent in working with geriatrics, if they were really struggling with behavioral issues, I always recommended that they try and find a geropsychiatrist because they just know how meds work in that population better than a general psychiatrist who may treat a variety of age groups. The next professional I want to talk about is a neuropsychiatrist. Now, that is a very specialized field as well. A neuropsychiatrist has to have a medical degree, so they've gone to medical school. They've had their 4 years of residency in psychiatry. They've also had an additional year spent in neurology. So they study and help people that have had traumatic brain injuries or seizure disorders or Bell's palsy, anything that's related to the neurocognitive side of things. And I love neuropsychiatrists. I think they are some of the most gifted people out there. I personally have utilized them for my family to get diagnosis for things like attention deficit disorder. Not that other people can't diagnose that, but the results that you're going to get from a neuropsychiatrist is going to be in depth. Their testing is very in depth. It took, I think, 4 hours for each test that was given to my family member, and the result was phenomenal. It's a 15-page report. They look at everything in terms of family dynamics, relationships, developmental milestones. They are just really looking at the total person and evaluating and making recommendations. So if you have a child in school that's struggling and you worry or someone said that they needed to be tested for attention deficit disorder, yes, you can get that in other places, but a neuropsychiatrist, to me, is the way to go because they're going to give recommendations to the school as to things they can implement to help your child. And to me, that was well money spent. So, neuropsychiatrists, again, a little bit harder to find, but they do exist. And my experience with them has been nothing but wonderful. The next professional I want to talk about is a nurse practitioner. Now, nurse practitioners are ones that have at least a master's degree in nursing. They may also have a specialization in mental health. Therefore, they can have a private practice, they can write prescriptions, they are board certified, they have had to pass licensure exams and board certification exams, and yes, they can write prescriptions, and they can do therapy. However, I find that most nurse practitioners that work in mental health are really more concerned about the medication therapy aspect. They usually have counselors in their practices to do the actual therapy, but a nurse practitioner is a little bit cheaper in terms of your out-of-pocket cost because you're not paying for a medical degree person to write the prescriptions. Now, they do have to be certified or supervised, rather, by a medical doctor. So it's not like they're not being supervised, okay? A lot of people are fearful, like nurse practitioners. No, I need to see a doctor. There are many wonderful nurse practitioners out there in private practice, and what they do is, just as good as going to see a psychiatrist. So it really just depends on your comfort level, but there's a lot of them out there in clinics and in private practice as well. And again, those are ones that have at least a master's in nursing with additional training in mental health and board certified to write prescriptions and licensed in the state in which they practice. Psychologists. Psychologists often get confused with psychiatrists. People use those words interchangeably, usually very incorrectly so. Psychiatrists are definitely part of the helping profession. However, psychologists focus more on testing and things like IQ testing and developmental testing. That's where you're going to find most of your psychologists. Psychologists do not write prescriptions. They look at testing and research. Some of them may have what's called a PsyD, which means they are more clinically trained and can do therapy. The PhD psychologist, see, it's easy to get them confused. The PhD psychologist is one who's usually really vested in research, and that's their passion. And they can assess, and they may do testing, they may do assessments, but generally speaking, they are not ones to do therapy. Again, they do a lot of testing on children in schools. They do testing for any kind of learning disability. They're great for that. But for therapy, unless the person has a PsyD, you're not going to find too many therapists that are just psychologists, because their scope is more research and observing based than clinically treating based, if that makes sense. Still wonderful people. I've worked with a number of psychologists. They were wonderful in their own fields, but it's just a different, perspective. It's in a different wheelhouse than some of the other specialties in mental health. What's next? LPC. Let's talk about counselors now. So, an LPC is a licensed professional counselor. They have a master's degree in counseling. In addition to that, they have spent 3,000 work hours in the field of counseling post-grad, meaning that after they got their master's, they worked in the field with supervision for 3,000 hours. Then they must pass a licensure exam in the state in which they want to provide services. And then they can hang their shingle and call themselves an LPC and do counseling. Now, I will say that an LPC is a little different than an LCSW, which I'm going to get to next. LPCs focus more on behavioral changes. They're not really able to give a clinical diagnosis because they haven't been trained in that. And that's where the difference is going to lie between an LPC and an LCSW. But an LPC can definitely be utilized for therapy, and they work with individuals, both adult and children and adolescents, and they can definitely provide therapy. An LCSW is a licensed clinical social worker. In order to have that, you have to have a master's degree in social work with the 3,000 hours of post-grad supervised training in the clinical realm of mental health. So you are working in inpatient or outpatient psychiatry as a social worker, and you have weekly supervision meetings with another LCSW that is supervising and coaching, giving you feedback. And after you've accrued those 3,000 hours, you can take a state licensing exam, and if you pass it, then you are fully provisioned. Prior to that, you are only provisionally licensed. You are fully licensed after you complete your 3,000 hours. And personally, this was always my career objective. I do not have my LCSW right now. I do have my master's in social work with a specialization in mental health. I did have a provisional license at one time, but the timing for accruing those hours, at the time I was given a provisional license, it just did not work out. I had something going on with one of my children, and the practice that I was working at closed. And so for those reasons, I never really pursued it beyond that. I have worked as a social worker since then, and I have worked in direct practice, but none of the positions that I was in required me to have a license, and it's expensive to get your license. I'm just going to be really honest with you. There's fees for taking exams for all of these disciplines, but social workers, we don't go into this profession to get wealthy. We go into it because we want to help people. And it's a great profession, though. It does offer a lot of opportunities. But for me personally, at this stage in the game, I'm probably not going to pursue my LCSW because I really don't need it. I work now in a different capacity in the helping profession. I work in the pharmaceutical manufacturer industry, and I love my job, and I'm very well compensated and valued. I feel valued. They make me feel valued. I can't always say that I felt that way working as a social worker. It's a hard job. It's a hard job. And I did love it, but the compensation wasn't always the best. And so I'm very happy where I'm at now. The other side of being in private practice, whether you're an LPC or an LCSW, you have to be accepted on various insurance panels so that you can bill with people's insurance. And even after you go through all that, you may get $50 for your assessment or $25 for an hour of therapy. So it's not the easiest way to make a living, honestly. But again, you can't go into this kind of field, I don't think, thinking you're going to get wealthy from it. It's really a drive from the heart. And that's what always drove me too. But I've been in the field for 30 years. I worked as a social worker in various entities, making chump change, making a little better than chump change. But so far as career salaries and things like that, I'm making the most I've ever made now. And I do not have a social work title at my job. However, my toe will always be in social work. That is really who I am. And that just means I like helping people and pointing them to resources and educating them in the ways that can improve their life. And I can do that. I can do that without a license. So that's one of the things that I started this YouTube channel for. And so, but I will always support my LCSWs. It's a wonderful degree. If I were 20 years younger, I would probably still pursue it. But on this side of life, I'm looking to retire in the next 10 or 15 years, and I just don't really want to put more effort forth at this point in the game. But LCSWs are wonderful for treating a variety of mental health disorders in children, adults, adolescents, and geriatrics. And we do have clinical training. I studied the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's where all the diagnostic criteria are found, and we had to know that. And I got exposure to that a lot during my time of working in inpatient and outpatient mental health practices. So could I take the test now and pass it? Probably. But the job I'm at now currently does not provide supervision. So you have to be supervised by someone else who has an LCSW for your hours to count. So I'm just not at that place, and I'm okay with that. I've accepted that. But it's a great career field if you know someone that's interested or you're interested. It can be a very rewarding career. But I think the key is starting young and go ahead and getting your license young and, making a really good career for yourself. But LPCs, LCSWs, both are wonderful people. I'm just more attuned to the LCSW side since those are the professionals that I have had more experience working with. And I understand what we had to go through to get our master's in social work and just feel more confident in their wheelhouse as to what they can really do. They definitely look at family dynamics. They look at the total person. They look at all the influences in the person's life and really come up with a concrete behavioral plan that has clinical basis for it. And they're truly change agents. And that's where I'm going to end with that. So I hope this gave you some insight today as to the different types of mental health providers that you may come across in your journey. If you know someone that is in need of services through mental health, they can always contact their local mental health authority. Sometimes that lies within counties. Sometimes that is state affiliated. Every state is a little different, but you definitely can talk to your primary care physician first for direction. And there's always National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, also known as NAMI. It's another great resource. I will put that also in the description box. I'll also put where I got this lovely backdrop in the description box if you're interested in purchasing one for yourself. Thank you so much for joining me today, taking time out of your busy day to listen to me ramble about stuff. I appreciate that. I do want my channel to grow. I do enjoy doing and making videos for you guys. I hope you find it helpful. I would welcome any questions or comments that you may have to share today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys.